So I run a program. It's about to be its own NGO, actually, called School of Data. It was founded in around 2012, and we were like, oh, this is awesome. There's all this data available. But there wasn't a lot of people using it because not a lot of people actually have like the data skills to use it. So we started doing various events, and we were like, we'll train people. And at first, that ended up being a few people like traveling around the world. We're like, this is not super sustainable. I don't personally want to get on an airplane that much. And so what can we do? How can we ensure that people are being trained and they're able to use the data that's being released in a more sustainable way? So School of Data is now a network of individuals and kind of like-minded organizations. Our goals are to empower civil society to use, and journalists with the skills they need to use data. So our main objective is to advance like what I would like to call critical data literacy in civil society and in newsrooms with journalists. So we've trained loads of people. One of the primary projects we have, Yan is actually a fellow of ours this year. So we recruit people from around the world to do these 9-month fellowship programs. These tend to be people who are already technical. And one of the things that we want to work on is teaching them how to teach others. And so sometimes we recruit people who are very, very technical, and it's about teaching them how to interact with humans. They're great at interacting with computers. But OK, so what is data literacy? This is my best shruggy emoji. So this organization called the Data Pop Alliance did some research, I think in 2015. The report is called Beyond Data Literacy. And this is the definition they came up with for what data literacy is. So when we, so School of Data at one point, like maybe I think about 2 years ago, we started to think as well, like what is data literacy? We talk about this a lot. I think I kind of knew intuitively what I meant, but as a network, we weren't very good at articulating that. So we started to think about data literacy in terms of what people can do. And if you'll notice from this list, not a lot of it is like they know how to use, to scrape using Python. So it's not, we really don't define data literacy in terms of people's technical abilities, but in regards to what they can actually do with data. So a lot of it is are you able to ask questions? And then are you able to answer that question? So these are kind of, this is more about analytical thinking than about actual skills. So using this kind of research and talking to our partners, we developed something called the Data Literacy Matrix. So anyone who kind of works in this space probably knows that people they love hackathons, they love meetups, they love workshops. And so people would be like, awesome, can you come or can your partners come and do this training for us? And yeah, we have 3 days. And we want people to be data literate. And I was like, that's awesome. I mean, most people study computer science for a few years. So I don't know, it took me years to learn, but yeah, sure, I can transfer that to you in a few weeks or a few days. But we also, we didn't want to say that these workshops or meetups aren't useful at all. So we started to categorize our different types of activities into what they achieve. So this is terrible colors. I am not a good visual person, so I apologize. So the blue at the top, these kind of short-term meetups, workshops, and short-term training programs, we think that's good for awareness and community building, which I think is incredibly important, but we don't like to talk about it in terms of skills building. So then longer-term kind of programs, there's a new version of this that's much clearer, but longer-term programs kind of in here, the turquoisey section, that's good for skill building. And then these other types of projects, so in orange and blue, so there's kind of content creation. So when we talk about content creation, we're usually talking about the resources that trainers need, or things like massive open online course or other types of online resources. And then there's also projects. So we have people who will work with organizations to deliver projects with them. So they are throughout the process, teaching them things. So oh, okay, we've come upon this challenge. Now let me teach you about how to scrape data. Or let me teach you a new scraper because your scraper isn't working. And I will teach you why. But they're doing the project themselves. And for us, the most important part of that is that they are learning the process of designing and thinking about how to implement these projects, as opposed to just like someone coming in, doing it with them, and then disappearing, and then they don't even know how to like, do they even have the resources or skills to like maintain that project afterwards, stuff like that. So we try to do it with them so they're learning about, and like technical project management is very different than like normal project management, so there's a lot of project management happening. So when I talk about building critical data literacy, the things that we have learned and the things we think are the most important: focus on the fundamentals, inspire methodological thinking, and bridge into long-term training type of programs. So the first one I think is the most important: focus on fundamentals. On a weekly basis, I get an email from someone who wants me to teach them R or Python. We just did some user research around a curriculum we want to design. We talked to loads of people. Some of the people we talked to are actually in this room. And like, what skills, when you do data projects, what are you actually using? And across the board, everyone was like, yeah, mostly Excel. like, yeah, I mean, it's great to have someone who knows Python or something like that, but mostly Excel. Excel's pretty good. But Excel isn't very sexy. I think it is, but other people don't find it as exciting. So they really want to learn Python or R, but these are not necessarily the most important skills for them to learn. And then at the same time, we're often, the person who's facilitating or like organizing that training is not always the person being trained. And so they might be technical as well. So they're like, yeah, let's like teach R, like Python, even for awareness raising. And I'm like, yeah, but like, was the last time these persons did maths like when they were 16? Because like there's a lot we have to build to, and often why did they stop doing maths in the first place? Was it because they didn't like it? So we have to, it's like we don't want to scare people by introducing them a programming language when they would be perfectly fine in Excel, which is a system they already know how to use and are using for their budgets already. And now we're just teaching them tricks on top of that. So focus on the fundamentals. I have a friend who told me I should stop talking about Excel and call it bi-dimensional data manipulation using spreadsheet software. We thought this might be, like people like a buzzword. So inspire methodological thinking. So rather than teaching people what to do, teach them how to think about the problem. And so, like, again, this goes back to like one of the slides I had earlier. It's like when we think about data literacy, I'm not talking just about like the actual skills that you have to use your bidimensional data manipulation, whatever. I'm talking about like how can you think about a data problem, and how can you think about whether this isn't actually a data problem. I'm sure all of us in this room have tried to do a project and halfway through been like, oh, so data isn't the problem, is it? There's like a human problem here. So like by teaching people how to think about these kind of things, they are more likely in the future to be able to actually design and implement data projects themselves. And then, so build bridges into long-term trainings. So when we first started doing these projects, we were like, great, so we're gonna like embed a fellow with you and it's gonna be really awesome. And like the organization, yeah, they do want that. It sounds great, but they don't actually know how to like use that person when we start embedding them in the organization. So how can you think about like starting with an awareness raising activity, seeing who in the organization really needs technical skills? Are they fine just hiring a consultant once in a while? And can there just be someone you connect them to who can help them write a technical project description so they don't get like screwed by like some technical provider? So like, how can we work? Not everyone in an organization needs to learn how to code. Not everyone in general needs to learn how to code. So like thinking about like creating on-ramps for people. So like basic skills at first, raise their awareness about what they can do with data, and then if it's appropriate, think about longer term mentorship programs that you can do with them. But also like, this is much easier to convince organizations that they want to do a shorter term program at first, and yeah. So some more kind of lessons learned and challenges. Like really know your audience. And so it's really important for us to like improve and like share knowledge about the things that we're doing. Collaboration is really difficult, but I notice all the time how many people are doing the same things, and we're having the same problems, and we're not sharing that. But know your audience is, everything has to be contextualized. So these are 3 projects of like School of Data partners. So like in Mexico, we had data in Mezcal, and that's awesome. And the community layer loves it because they like are, they get together and they work on data sets and they drink mezcal and it's super fun. That might not necessarily work everywhere. So like a project in Nigeria, our partners Connected Development developed School of Data Radio, because that's how they could access the community they wanted to access, because that's how people got their information. And then in South Africa, they designed this like physical School of Data Journalism where they were able to get contact with loads of editors and send people. But like all of these projects, same objective, train people, but different access points. So one is a party, one is the radio, and one is like a structured school. So like something that we really like to think about is like not a lot of adults. I mean, like normally I wouldn't be doing presentations. Adults really like to get like, I would argue that children as well, being presented information is super boring. People like to get their hands like dirty and get into things. So we really try to think about that in the design of our workshops. So like, I don't know, we do things where like we do art projects and help them like learn about how they actually know how to visualize data kind of instinctually by giving them really simple data that they can like read, as a human. They don't need a computer to process, and then be like, visualize this, and then go around the room and see that, people like use their art and crafts very differently. They visualize different things. And so like that's kind of, and all of our trainings, we kind of organize around something called the data pipeline. And so we work through, it doesn't matter if it's 6 months or if it's 2 days or if it's like a half a day workshop. We will focus on starting from a question and then like working your way through. There's like, sometimes you have to go back and like really like the main things. A lot of people like to think about like the analyze phase, but you gotta get pretty far down before you get to analyze any data, and like the verification step, like verifying the accuracy of the data and things like that. So we design all of our workshops around that. So I guess my biggest lesson learned is that data is something that, like, data projects are best done together with people with different skill sets coming together. Not everyone is going to be able to really know how to tell a story and do the Python script, and those are unicorns. But getting people to collaborate, like our biggest lesson learned with journalists is like journalists really, that is a cultural thing. Like journalists are used to, like, it's my sources, my story, I don't want to get scooped. So now you have to like break that and be like, no, this is better done together as like a team of journalists. So that investigative journalists have that a little bit more, but it's really like a cultural thing. So we have to kind of integrate that into all our projects. How do you work with other people? How do you find people with complementary skills? And so yeah, that's like some of the lessons from School of Data, and that's our Twitter.